Hey, welcome back to Cody's Chopper Corner. Today we're going to be talking about points versus electronic ignition and which one's going to be better for you. First of all, I want to start by saying that points and electronic ignition both have their place. Whether you're restoring a 1941 knucklehead or trying to throw together an Evo Sportster to ride around. Each one of these ignition systems will work better in a certain situation than another. So today we're just going to go over a couple of things with these ignitions to try to make it easier for you to decide which one's right for you. So today we're going to start with covering roughly the electronic ignition. So you might be asking yourself, what is an electronic ignition? And essentially, it's a sealed electronic unit that replaces where the points originally go. And what it does is some of them have a hub that sits in the middle off the end of your camshaft, and a lot of them have some sort of material that the sensor will pick up, either a magnet or a piece of metal or something. And as your camshaft spins, the sensor sitting on the side will pick up on that piece of metal or magnet or whatever it is that it's spinning past. And each time that it spins past, it sends a signal to the coil to fire. There are a couple different styles. There is the one that is a full sealed unit that has the switches for your ignition curves, rev limiters. Some of them even have a cool option to where you can put a kickstart switch on it so that it fires every time you kick it instead of every other time, and that makes it easier for kickstart bikes, which is cool. The other unit I'm referring to has the hub in the center. I'm not sure if that's the right word for it, but the hub in the center and the sensor off to the side. And those are both two different styles. I'm sure there's a ton of different styles, but those are the two more popular ones for electronic. And let's go over some of the pros and cons for electronic ignition. Alright, so I made a little list here on my laptop. So pros for the electronic ignition are going to be, it's kind of like a set it and forget it type of method. You install it on the bike, and pretty much once it's installed, you don't really have to mess with it. It's pretty simple. Another pro is it's a sealed unit, so it stands up to corrosion and weather. Like if you're riding in the rain and stuff like that, it stands up to all that pretty well, which is pretty big if you're going to be doing a lot of miles on your bike. Another big one is the electronic ignition is really good for performance applications because they're so fine-tunable. Is that a word? I don't know. But you can fine-tune them really well, and that's why a lot of guys like them. They're really easy to install. Install time shouldn't be more than really, you could do the whole thing in probably an hour, and that's for a beginner. There's not really any wear parts on them, which is a big plus. And the biggest one is they're just reliable. Pretty much once you install them, they're good to go, and you don't ever touch them again until they stop working. So with the good comes the bad. The cons for these that I've found personally are they're pretty expensive. The whole unit to get started, let's say you're building a bike and you don't have anything to start with, you're going to be into a decent setup anywhere from like $300 to $500. That's your coil, the ignition unit, spark plug wires, pretty much everything you need to get going. But yeah, they're kind of pricey. A big thing for the cons, especially for like the chopper side of things, is you're just adding more to the bike. There's more wiring. The coils that you have to get for these things can be pretty ugly and bulky. If it's a bike that you're mostly just wanting to like crush miles on, it doesn't really matter too much. But if you're going for like aesthetics, then yeah, not the greatest looking, and there's more wiring. Another thing for a con would be they're prone to shorting out. Like I've seen guys hook them up wrong and fry the ignition module, or I mean, it's really dumb to do, but like welding on your bike without the battery unplugged, and then your ignition system doesn't work anymore. Or just like grounding out a wire, like switching your battery out or something, and then all of a sudden your ignition doesn't work anymore. So you have to remember that it's an electronic unit and they're prone to electronical problems. So that's a big one. But the biggest one for me, and we experienced this a couple of times with some friends going out riding on trips and stuff, is that when you have an electronic ignition and you're out in the middle of nowhere on a trip, if it goes out and you don't have a spare $200-$300 ignition module in your back pocket, you're done. You're screwed. Like, you're not fixing that. It's a sealed unit. It's basically like the equivalent of dropping your phone in a lake or something. Like, once it's fried, it's fried. So you got to keep that in mind. That's a big one. Honestly, that's the deciding factor for me on the bikes that I build. Is I like to ride them, and I like to go on trips, and I like to be in a position where I can just swap things out quickly and easily, and that's not the greatest with electronic ignition. But you can do it. Like if you want to buy an extra one and keep it in your tool roll or something, then you're set. You know, hook up a couple wires and set your timing, and you're on your way. All right, let's go over points real quick. So I'm not really going to dive too deeply into the points because points have been around since engines have been around, basically. And there's tons of videos on them online, but basically what points do is there's an external cam lobe that pretty much bolts to the outside of your camshaft in the cone. And as your motor spins, it's going to spin that little lobe. And when the lobe spins, it's going to, the lobe on the cam is going to open your points and close your points. Every time it does that, it does the same thing as the electronic ignition, to where it sends a signal to your coil to fire. And it's a pretty simple, tried and true mechanism for ignition. Unlike the ignition curves and everything with an electronic ignition, Points has a mechanical advance unit that sits behind your points plate. So when you go to install that, that's what you'll install first. And it's super simple. It's two pivoting weights that are held on with springs. And the faster your engine spins, the weights with centrifugal force will pull apart and change your timing depending on your RPM. It's a pretty good system, honestly. It works pretty well. They've used it for years and years and years. Like I said, pretty much since engines have been around, they've been using Points. So let's talk about the pros and cons for a point system. So the pros would be, it's pretty cheap to get into. I pretty much only run Blue Streak points. If you're gonna do points, do good points. Blue Streak is probably the best in my opinion. Really quality stuff. So I would suggest doing Blue Streak, points, and condenser, and you're only going to be into that, like the whole entire setup, for probably around $100 to $150. So, and that's for the entire thing with the advanced mechanism and everything. All right, so let's go on to the next thing for the pros. It's pretty easy to adjust your points. Every oil change I go through and just check my points gap with a feeler gauge, make sure I'm still within spec, and it'll make your bike run a lot better if you keep it in spec. So yeah, they're pretty easy to adjust. Having an extra set of points on you for a backup plan is a lot cheaper. All that really goes bad on these for the most part is the contact points themselves, the parts that come apart and go together, and your condenser. And you can buy the entire setup with the backing plate and everything for like $25 on eBay or something like that. So to throw one of those in your tool roll compared to throwing an extra like $200 to $300 ignition module is a win in my book. Like I said, you're not really going to get the performance out of points that you would in electronic ignition. So there's definitely like pros and cons for both of them. Back to the pros for points. Less wiring. You only have one wire going out of your points system up to your coil, and then from your battery to your coil, and that's your whole ignition system for the most part. Also, another good thing is the coils are a lot cheaper, and you can get them in the smaller coils, and you can get the old school like knucklehead, early panhead style coils, the long chrome or black ones that look pretty cool on an old chopper. And here comes the cons for the points. I know you're all waiting for it. I know you're ready to type it out on the comment section of why points suck. So let's get through it. Like I said before, they're not as high performance as an electronic ignition. They're susceptible to corrosion and wear. There's a lot of moving parts for a points setup, so they wear out. But I mean, I've seen bikes that are like barn find bikes that still have their original points in them and everything that work just fine. As long as you take care of your stuff, it'll take care of you. But yeah, with like the corrosion and stuff, if I don't ride my bike all winter and I go in to start it, sometimes it won't start, and I'll have to get in there and put a piece of sandpaper in between the contact points and kind of clean them up a little bit, and then it'll fire right off. But that's something you don't have to deal with electronic ignition. There's more moving parts to fail. I've seen advanced mechanisms come apart, springs break, springs wear out or stretch, and your bike will start running poorly. Again, this kind of comes down to buying quality straight from the start. You don't really have to worry about that kind of stuff, but they're slightly more temperamental when it comes to timing. I feel like for whatever reason, electronic ignition's more forgiving when you're setting your timing and stuff. Yeah, you gotta be spot on with setting your points. Another con I would say would probably be it's harder to install for a beginner. If you've never done it before, it can be pretty intimidating. It's not hard, you just have to do it right. But that I can see that pushing some people away to where on the electronic ignitions, they're pretty basic and easy to set up, to where points are kind of not. So what would you say is better? Honestly, I can't say which one's better. My wife's big twin Evo chopper that I built, I run Ultima ignition in that thing, and it's awesome. I've never had any problems. My pan, shovel, everything else that I own, I run points in it, or Magneto, which is also points. And also, I know a couple of you guys have been asking, I'm going to do a Magneto video, full install, setup, everything. So look for that one coming out. But yeah, I can't really say which one's better. I kind of will let you guys decide. It's kind of personal preference, but I feel like I just wanted to give you guys kind of a rundown if you're kind of on the fence maybe of what you should get or what you should run. So just keep all that stuff in mind and try to figure out which one works best for you. And if you feel like I've missed something or got something wrong, let me know in the comments. I appreciate you guys watching these videos, and it really helps me out when you guys like and subscribe and share these videos with people. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment or get a hold of me through Instagram. My Instagram name is OG Coda, or you can get a hold of me on Instagram through the Cody's Chopper Corner page. All right, I think that's going to cover it for today's video. And as always, if there's a certain topic you guys want me to cover, please let me know, and I'll try to get these videos pumped out as fast as I can for you. I am a married man with 2 kids, a full-time job, and a motorcycle shop. So I'm busy, but I like doing these videos. I like the feedback. All the comments are always super cool, and I really appreciate you guys. We just hit over 2,000 subscribers a little while back, which is crazy. I can't believe that many of you guys want to listen to me ramble on, but I really do appreciate it. So as always, like and subscribe and share these videos, and thanks for watching.